Zelina was just a little girl when her world changed. Her mother, the kindest woman in the village of Ndoroko, fell sick and passed away, leaving behind a silence that settled heavy in their small clay home. Her father, a quiet man who used to smile when her mother sang, became even quieter. They lived side by side, two lonely hearts trying to stay warm in the cold shadow of grief. For a while, it was just the two of them. Simple days, soft memories, and a missing piece they both felt but never spoke of. Then came Madina. She arrived like a whisper on the wind, pretty, well-dressed, with a sweet voice that poured like honey. But her eyes were something else. Cold, watching, measuring. The kind of eyes that made even the bravest village children turn away. Still, she smiled and cooked and cleaned. And Zelina's father, tired of his loneliness, let her into their home and into his heart. The neighbors saw it first. Old Auntie Jara muttered that Madina walked like someone hiding secrets. The women at the well whispered behind their buckets, warning, "That one carries something dark in her." But Zelina's father wouldn't listen. He was just happy to hear laughter again in the house, even if it wasn't real. Zelina tried to smile too, but something inside her shivered when Madina looked at her. Something deep told her this woman's smile wasn't for love, it was for show, and the peace they had known was already slipping away. Zelina wanted nothing more than to be loved. After her mother's death, she had a hole in her heart that no game or song could fill. So when Madina became her stepmother, Zelina hoped, deep down, that maybe, just maybe, she could find love again. She tried everything. Every morning she woke up early to fetch water, sweep the yard and help with cooking. She even gave Madina her favorite beads, small, shiny ones her mother had given her before she passed. "For you," she said softly, placing them in Madina's hand, her eyes full of hope. But Madina didn't smile. She didn't say thank you. She only stared at the beads for a second, before tucking them away, like they meant nothing. From that day on, something shifted. Madina's eyes grew colder, her words sharper. No matter how hard Zelina tried, it was never enough. The food was suddenly never ready, right. The water was too warm, and the house was never clean enough. Worse, Madina started to lie. Quiet lies, whispered like poison into the father's ear. She disrespected me. She broke the bowl on purpose. She's turning lazy. And the father, worn down and blind with trust, began to change. His eyes no longer lit up when he saw Zelina. His voice became distant, sometimes cold. He believed Madina's stories and started scolding Zelina for things she didn't do. Then came the hunger. Madina began serving food for herself and the father, leaving only scraps for Zelina, sometimes nothing at all. Her stomach growled at night. But worse than the hunger was the ache in her heart. She couldn't understand why someone would hate her for just being there. She had done nothing wrong. She only wanted love. But Madina didn't see a child. She saw a threat, a reminder of the woman who came before her. And the more Zelina smiled through the pain, the more Madina's hatred burned. Slowly, day by day, Zelina felt herself disappearing from her father's heart. The girl who once danced in the sun was now shrinking in the shadows, praying someone, anyone, would see the truth before it was too late. The morning felt like any other in the village of Ndoroko. Birds sang in the trees, and the sun peeked over the hills. But inside the house, something dark was brewing. Madina moved through the kitchen quietly, her footsteps soft, her hands careful. She looked over her shoulder once, twice, making sure no one was watching. Then she reached into her cloth bag and pulled out a small bundle wrapped in brown leaves. Inside was something deadly, crushed snake root, a poison known only to a few. Her hands didn't shake, her eyes didn't blink. She opened the pot of stew bubbling gently over the fire and sprinkled the powder inside. Not too much, just enough. Enough to make Zelina sick, enough to make her waste away, quietly without suspicion. Madina stirred the pot slowly, the way a loving mother would, but there was no love in her heart, only jealousy, only hate. In her twisted mind, this was justice. She took up too much space, she whispered to herself. She took too much love. Once the stew was ready, Madina spooned it into a small wooden bowl, the one Zelina always used. She even added a pinch of salt on top, just the way the girl liked it. Then she placed the bowl gently on the table like nothing was wrong, like it was just another meal in a quiet home. She stood back and looked at it. That bowl was more than food. It was a trap, a final goodbye disguised as kindness. If Zelina ate it, Everything would be over. No more chores, no more beads, no more little footsteps in the morning, just silence. And Madina, free from the child who haunted her every smile. She heard Zelina's footsteps approaching and quickly forced a smile onto her face. "Your food is ready," she said sweetly. Zelina, tired and hungry, didn't know that danger waited for her in that bowl. She just saw a rare moment of kindness and felt her heart lift, just a little. But fate had other plans, because sometimes evil prepares a meal, but destiny pulls up an unexpected chair. Just as Zelina reached for the bowl of stew, there was a knock at the door, 3 firm taps that echoed through the quiet house. Madina's smile faded for a second. Zelina looked up, surprised. They rarely had visitors this early. The door creaked open, and in stepped Gogo Bantu, the village elder, tall and wise with a walking stick carved from sacred wood. His grey beard flowed like a river, and his eyes held stories older than the hills. "Peace to this house," he said in his deep, calm voice. Madina's hands clenched. Of all people to show up unannounced, it had to be Gogo Bantu. He was respected, feared even, said to be close to the spirits. You couldn't lie to his face and walk away free. "I felt something strange," he continued, stepping inside. "The spirits told me to visit. A blessing is needed here." Madina forced a smile, her voice trembling just a little. "You honor us, Gogo. Please sit." Gogo Bantu looked around, his eyes landing on the bowl in front of Zelina. "I have not eaten all day," he said. "May I share a little of this stew before I begin the blessing?" Madina's heart stopped. Zelina, surprised but respectful, quickly pushed the bowl toward him. "Of course, Gogo. You can have mine." "No!" Madina said sharply, then coughed and corrected herself. "I mean, I'll cook you a fresh one." But Gogo Bantu was already lifting the spoon. "No need to waste. This will do." Madina's face turned pale. She stood frozen, eyes wide, watching every bite he took. Each movement of the spoon felt like thunder in her ears. Her breath grew shallow, her hands shaking behind her back. Zelina didn't understand. She only saw a kind elder enjoying her food, proud to serve him, even if she was still hungry. But Madina, she saw her plan falling apart in the worst possible way. She had set a trap for a child, and now the most powerful elder in the village was eating it. Fate had just turned the table. The poison meant to destroy an innocent girl was now moving through the veins of a man who could see through lies, and who never came anywhere without reason. At first, everything seemed normal. Gogo Bantu sat quietly after finishing the stew, resting his hands on his knees. He looked calm, even peaceful, but then, suddenly, his face changed. His eyes narrowed, and a strange tightness spread across his forehead. He leaned forward, gripping the table, breathing hard. "Gogo," Zelina said softly, stepping closer. He didn't answer. Then, all at once, his body went stiff. His spoon clattered to the floor, and before anyone could react, Gogo Bantu collapsed sideways onto the mat. "Gogo!" Zelina screamed. The house exploded into chaos. Her father, hearing the noise, rushed from the backyard. His eyes widened at the sight of the elder lying still. "What happened?" Madina stuttered, her voice shaking. He must be ill. I don't know." Zelina stood frozen, her hands over her mouth. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. All she could think was, "He ate the stew I gave him." The bowl still sat on the table, now looking like something cursed. Tears welled in her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. "I didn't mean to hurt him. I didn't know." Her father lifted Gogo's limp body into his arms. "We're going to the herbalist. Now!" he barked. Without another word, he rushed out the door, carrying the man who held the wisdom of generations. Madina stood in the corner, frozen in fear, but not because she cared. No, her fear was different. What if he survives? What if he speaks? Just as they reached the edge of the doorway, Gogo Bantu's eyes fluttered open for a brief moment. His voice, weak but clear, escaped his lips like a final breath carried by the wind. "The darkness isn't hers, it's in the kitchen." Then he passed out again. Zelina looked up, confused. The words wrapped around her heart like a blanket of hope. He didn't blame her. He knew something wasn't right. Madina, standing by the fire, heard the words too. Her face turned white, her hands trembling as she stared at the empty bowl. The truth had been spoken, quietly but powerfully. And even in sickness, Gogo Bantu had pointed toward the shadow hiding in plain sight. At the herbalist's hut, the air was thick with worry. Gogo Bantu lay on a mat, his breathing shallow, his skin pale. Herbalist Kofi, a man known for his sharp eyes and deep knowledge, worked quickly, mixing leaves, roots, and oils. His hands moved with purpose, but his mind was racing. "This is not sickness from the air or water," he muttered. Something was inside him, something unnatural. He turned to Zelina's father, who stood nervously by the door. "What did he eat before this happened?" Kofi asked. "The stew," the father replied. "From our home." Kofi's face tightened. "Bring me the pot. Now." Moments later, the pot of stew arrived, carried by a shaking servant. Kofi bent over it, sniffing, stirring, studying. Then he reached into a small pouch and dropped a few drops of liquid into the pot. The stew hissed and turned dark. He looked up, eyes burning. "Snake root," he said coldly. This stew was poisoned. Gasps filled the room. Zelina's hands flew to her mouth. No, I didn't do it. I gave him my food. I thought I was helping him." Kofi turned to her, searching her eyes. What he saw there wasn't guilt. It was fear and heartbreak. He nodded slightly. "I believe you, child." Then his gaze shifted to Madina. She stood by the wall, arms crossed, pretending to be confused. "Why would anyone poison stew? Who would do such a thing?" she said with fake shock. Kofi wasn't fooled. "Enough games. Someone in that house knows the truth. If you do not speak now, the spirits will come to all of us, especially the guilty." The room grew silent. Even the wind seemed to pause outside. Madina's eyes darted from face to face. She saw judgment, suspicion, truth closing in. Then, finally, she cracked. Her voice snapped, sharp like a broken stick. "Maybe Zelina did it. Maybe she wanted attention." "Lies," Kofi said firmly, cutting her off. "She gave her bowl to Gogo Bantu with a pure heart. That is no act of guilt. That is the act of a child who still believes in goodness." Madina opened her mouth, but no words came. Her mask had fallen. The truth was no longer hidden, and the whole village would soon know the darkness that had been cooking in that kitchen. That night, the village of Ndoroko did not sleep. The air felt heavy, like the sky was holding its breath. Then the first scream came, not from a person, but from the chickens. Loud, wild, and terrified, people rushed out of their homes, only to find chickens flapping wildly, crashing into fences, as if running from something unseen. Then, in the stillness that followed, pots began to fall, one by one, in different homes. No one touched them, no wind, just a loud clang, over and over again, the sound of something angry, something unseen making itself known. Zelina sat on her mat, hugging her knees, her heart pounding. She didn't understand what was happening, but deep down, she felt it. Something was coming, something powerful. Madina, on the other hand, paced the room like a trapped animal. Her hands trembled, and her eyes darted to every corner like she was waiting for something to jump out at her. Before midnight, a knock echoed through the village, slow, heavy. It was Mama Oka, the oldest seer in Ndoroko. Her skin was wrinkled like tree bark, and her eyes were as white as the moon. But she saw everything, past, present, and spirit. She stood at Zelina's door, staff in hand. "The spirit of a mother cries tonight," she said, her voice thick with power. "She has been disturbed. She wants justice." Everyone gathered around her. No one dared speak. Mama Oka stepped inside the house, raised her hand, and pointed at Madina. "You brought poison into this home," she said. "You tried to end a child that was never yours. And now, her mother, her spirit, will not rest until the truth is known and peace is restored." Madina's face twisted in fear. No, it's not me." But the room began to shake softly, the flames in the lanterns flickering wildly. Mama Oka didn't blink. "Spirits do not lie." Zelina stared at the old woman, tears in her eyes, not from fear, but from something deeper. Her mother hadn't forgotten her. Even in death, she had come back to protect her child. And now the whole village was watching. The spirit's wrath had been awakened, and the truth had finally found its voice. The next morning, the whole village seemed to hold its breath. Word had spread fast. Something dark had happened in Zelina's home, and the spirits were restless. Under the wide branches of the ancient Baobab tree, the village elders gathered. Their faces were serious, worn by years of wisdom and responsibility. This was not just a simple meeting. It was the moment the village would decide what justice meant. Gogo Bantu, still weak but steady, sat among them. His eyes, sharp despite his illness, looked at Madina with a quiet strength that spoke louder than any words. The herbalist Kofi stood nearby, holding the empty stew pot as evidence. Mama Oka, the seer, was there too, her presence heavy with the power of the spirit world. One by one, the elders spoke. They remembered the strange sounds during the night, the chickens' cries, the falling pots, signs they could not ignore. They spoke of the poison found in the stew and the whispered warning from Gogo Bantu before he collapsed. The darkness isn't hers, it's in the kitchen. All eyes turned to Madina. She stood alone, her face pale and her lips trembling. She tried to speak, to defend herself, but the weight of the evidence was too strong. The elders shook their heads, their voices firm and certain. Madina, the chief elder said, you brought harm to this village. You poisoned a respected elder and tried to hurt a child who only wanted love. This is a betrayal, not just to a family, but to all of us. The verdict was clear. You will be banished from Ndoroko, the chief declared, forever. No one here shall offer you shelter or food. The spirits demand it, and so do we. Madina's knees buckled, and she fell to the ground, tears streaming down her face, not for the pain she caused, but for the life she had lost in her own darkness. Zelina watched quietly, her heart heavy, but her spirit strong. Justice had been served, but she knew healing would take time. The village had spoken, and the darkness that had tried to destroy her family was cast out. Under the Baobab's wide branches, the sun broke through the leaves, casting light on a new beginning, for Zelina, for her father, and for all of Ndoroko. After Madina was banished, a heavy silence settled over the house. Zelina's father stood outside, his shoulders heavy with shame. For so long, he had been blind to what was happening right under his roof. He hadn't seen Madina's cruelty, hadn't protected his own daughter when she needed him most. Now, all the regret came crashing down. One evening, he found Zelina sitting alone by the fire, staring into the flickering flames. His steps were slow and uncertain as he approached her. Without a word, he dropped to his knees before her, his hands trembling. "Zelina," he whispered, voice thick with sorrow. "I was wrong. I should have seen the truth. I failed you as a father." Tears welled up in Zelina's eyes. She had longed for his love and protection, but she never imagined this moment. She reached out, placing her hand gently over his. "I forgive you, father," she said softly. "We can heal together." That night, something shifted between them. It wasn't magic or sudden happiness. It was the quiet beginning of trust and hope. Zelina's father started to listen more, to watch her carefully, and to show the care she had been missing. Slowly, the walls they built between them began to crumble. Zelina herself felt a change inside. The pain she had carried was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She realized her strength was deeper than any hardship. Each day she woke, with a little more light in her eyes, a light born from surviving darkness and refusing to be broken. She helped her father with chores, smiled at neighbors, and even started planting herbs in their small garden. The village began to see her not as a sad girl who had suffered, but as a young woman growing stronger with every passing day. The journey wasn't easy, and some nights the shadows still whispered, but Zelina held on to hope, knowing that forgiveness and love were the seeds of healing. And in the quiet moments, when the stars shone bright over Ndoroko, she felt her mother's spirit near, watching, proud, and finally at peace. Months passed, and the village of Ndoroko saw a new Zelina, stronger, brighter, and full of life. She no longer walked with the sadness that once shadowed her every step. Instead, she moved with quiet confidence, carrying the kindness her mother had taught her and the strength she had found within herself. Zelina spent her days tending a small garden of herbs, learning their secrets and using them to heal others in the village. People who once doubted her came to her for help, and she never turned anyone away. Her hands, gentle and sure, worked miracles on aching bodies and restless minds. The villagers began to respect her, not just as the girl who survived darkness, but as a healer, a light in their community. Children listened when she spoke, and elders nodded with approval. Even her father, now proud and full of love, stood beside her, grateful for the daughter he almost lost. On the morning of her birthday, the sun rose over Ndoroko like a promise. Its warm light spilled through the trees, bathing the village in gold. Just then, Gogo Bantu, strong and smiling, appeared at her doorstep. His presence was like a blessing. "You were born for more, Zelina," he said, his voice steady and kind. "Not even poison could stop your spirit." Tears filled Zelina's eyes, not of sadness, but of joy. She had faced darkness and come out shining. The future was hers to shape, full of hope and endless possibility. And as the village awakened to a new day, so did Zelina, ready to write the next chapter of her life, with courage and light leading the way.